Welcome back to the Flyers Nitty Gritty podcast, Gettin Gritty Wit It with your host, Yariv, Wolok. And I have two guests today with me, returning guests, Chris Maher. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, man? How are you? Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining last minute. We really appreciate that. And new guest, James Iacavone.
You got it, right? Dude. First try.
Yes, I'm trying.
I was waiting for you to butcher that.
From High and Wide, if you guys don't know. Yeah, I was totally thinking I was going to butcher it. High and Wide. Jim, excited to have you on the show. We've talked before. I've been on your podcast, so it's good to have you on this one.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to hang out with you, talk some Flyers.
Yeah, and honestly, right before we started the show, I think it's like the best way to start it because you're like, we were talking about how the Flyers were positive, and it feels good. I want to start right into that, okay? So actually, before I do, let's just give a quick shout out to the sponsor. That's Jim's Steaks on South. They're Flyers fans. Ken over there and the rest of the team, they're Flyers fans. That's why they work with us. They have great cheesesteaks. It's COVID. Order some cheesesteaks. Stay warm. All right. So the Flyers are a winning team right now. They're 7-2-1. They haven't played perfect, so let's be honest. I don't think anybody has said that, but there has been a progression, and there's a noticeable level of talent with this team. And 7-2-1 is something we haven't seen in a long time here. And even without playing the best hockey, they're still kind of bringing it. And if it's not all of the team, at least somebody stands on their head, whether it be Elliott or Hart. Like you have two goalies that are playing well. You have an offense. You have a defense. Maybe it's a little light, but also has some star power as well. It's been an interesting start to the season. Jim, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah.
How do you feel overall about the 7-2-1 record? Do you feel like the Flyers are tied in first place? Does it really feel that way? Does it feel like an illusion of some sort?
I'm going to be honest. No, it doesn't really feel like an illusion to me. But at the same time, I also feel that they're lucky to be 7-2. 7-2-1, the way that they've played. Now, I think on my show, I had said, I'm going to give this team 10 games to get their stuff together a little bit. Didn't expect it to be this, poor. I think we expected better, with AV taking over in the second year. You kind of figured that they would at least have the system down a little bit better, like it looks like they're just playing a different style. Well, I'm sure we're going to talk about that later on in the show. I don't know how you can't be pleased that they have 7 wins out of the first 10 games. I know it's the way that they've done it is not great, but it could have been a lot worse. They could have played like they did and ended up with 3-4 wins, and then it would be like the end of the world. But it's like, before the season, I said, dude, just get 6-7 wins. They're going to probably look not great, and that's what they did. They got 7 wins. And now they move on to the next 10 games, get your stuff together, and win a couple more games. I'm happy with the way it is.
I like that. I like that answer. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think for the most part, I feel like it's very similar to last year where, they started 5-5-1. Took them a while in the preseason. They were very bad. And I know AV, hinted that, at the start of this year, saying how it took them pretty much 2 months to get into the season. And and again, obviously we all know it hasn't been perfect. But again, they've won games. They just get 2 overtime wins. I think for the most part, they've shown up in a lot of games. Obviously the consistent effort is still there, but it's improving. I think since that 6-1 game against Boston, they've played a lot better consistently, and I think it's been trending in the right way. And obviously, kind of the expectation this year was that they kind of start off hot. Obviously, you add a few guys in-house and Patrick and Lindblom that are healthy and all that stuff. So for the most part, I feel like it's, again, I don't see a reason to be worried about this team to fall off. And again, listen, they're winning games now. Is this going to continue? Probably not, because again, I don't really think you can go into a season and keep winning games like this, because I think it's just going to hurt you going later down the road. But as of now, I don't think there's any reason to be mad or worried about a team that's 7-2-1 and tied for first place.
Yeah, and I want to touch on something Jim said in the very beginning. It's the expectations weren't. It's funny. You're like, it's almost like they're playing a new system, but you didn't expect them to come in looking like they were learning for the first time. You thought there'd be kind of maybe a well-oiled machine to some degree, but it really felt like we were kind of just starting from scratch. But having said that, we look at 4 wins in a row. We look at back-to-back victories against the same team. That's something we saw the team do last year. It's almost like they're starting to kind of come back into that mode. The only concern I have at this point, because it's trending in the right direction, is the blown leads, right? Like even in these wins, even 3-1, like I was like, oh man, I'm excited. I'm like, the Flyers might actually walk away with maybe a 5-1, maybe a 4-1 win against the Islanders. And it never really felt safe, right? As soon as they applied pressure, it broke. And it's not a goaltending issue. I'll go to Jim again on this one to start, since you brought up the point. Do you think that something like this, like these blown leads, this kind of bearing down, do you think that's a systems issue, or do you think that's a personnel issue?
It could be a little bit of both right now. You mentioned, it seems like they're trying to get their bearings again with this, the style of play that AV wants to play. They're in like a weird spot because they have new guys in Gustafsson. They're like flexing guys in. They were, we didn't know who the top pair was for a while with Provorov. They were going to try that whole Braun and Gustafsson experiment, play the one guy on offense, the other guy on D. And it's like, that's not how you really do a top pair. Coots went out. I think it was the 3rd or 4th game. So that's a thing. You lose your number one, defending Selke trophy winner, center. So they've had to go through some adversity early, and I'm not using those things as excuses, but it seems to be a little bit of a mix of both for me, players and, learning the system again. I think that's why as fans, as much as we want them to come out, firing on all cylinders right out of the gate, you have to kind of give them time. They didn't have a camp, by the way, too. Like you have to give them a little bit of time, a little bit of patience. We're looking at guys like Lindblom and Patrick, who I don't think anybody's expecting them to come in right away and produce. Like it's almost kind of like they have a pass for a little bit this year, and rightfully so. So you mix all these things together, and I think you kind of get what we're seeing. I think what's great through the first 10 games is we're seeing, even though this team's getting massively outplayed at certain points, that they never give up. And I think that's that's a really good characteristic to have, in a winning team. They went through a ton of adversity last year with Lindblom going out with the cancer. Nolan Patrick missed an entire season. I think what's happening this year is just more tests for this team. And I think that's what this particular team needed, is they needed actual tests. And so I hope that's how they're looking at this. I hope they come out of this with, okay, we're going to get Coots back. Now let's go. Let's get our stuff together.
I love that. And that's kind of how I see things, right? I equate all those things together and then see the results of a 7-2 win or a 7-2 record, 7-2-1 record. And I go, okay, overcoming adversity. I love it.
Exactly.
Chris, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree. I think for the most part, a lot of it's weird because it seems like at times that the blown lead, I feel like it's kind of going off what you said, Yariv. It's like that lead last night didn't necessarily really seem safe. And I think from the start, it was like they wanted to start with the 4th line for that period. And I know we talked about this earlier, where like they start with the 4th line and then they couldn't really do anything with that shift, and they score a minute 3 in, and then they get that Barzal goal too. But I think for the most part, if I'm going off that same question, if it's systems or personnel, I think for them, I think it's both too. I think a lot of it reminds me of the playoffs at times when they play, because they always do that play. You ever notice they always go behind the net every time, and they got to get the perfect outlet pass? Like that hurts them, and it hurt them last year. At times it does. At times it works. At times it's hurt them. It seems like, as I said, I think consistently their game's getting better, but for the most part, they have a lot of turnovers that lead to chances. Not as much last night. But again, that's also gotten better as the games have went on. They got away with it against the second game against New Jersey, had a lot of turnovers. So I think for the most part, there's been nights where they've had a lot, some nights where the goaltending's bailed them out. I think that's been probably the most consistent thing through the first 10 games has been the goaltending. I think for the most part, most of it seems like a lot of them are just still trying to get into sync because, again, it was a weird camp. You didn't have a preseason. You didn't have any of that stuff. You're just going first game of the year. You're right into it. So I think it's still, you kind of need some time to kind of get into this too. And I think that's for not just the Flyers, the whole league, because some teams don't look too hot right now. Some teams look a lot better than expected. Like, for example, Washington hasn't lost the game in regulation.
Right.
Right. I mean, who would have thought Montreal would have went off to that start? I mean, Ottawa's been playing very bad too. So again, for the most part, I think it's early. So I'm not going to, sit here and, I guess nitpick a bunch of things that could be so negative and everything. But again, I think for the most part, it's still very early in the season. And again, I think one thing too that a lot of guys kind of talked about, I know Braun talked about it in the beginning of the season, where this year, and I know Yariv, I talked to you about this before, where he kind of said that they don't really have to go through the curve of learning AV system, because it's not an easy system by any means. And I think they've done that. Some guys have done it better. Obviously, Gustafsson has been one guy that's, kind of taken out because he's still learning that system. And I know, Jim, you kind of just mentioned that too. But for the most part, I think a lot of it is just kind of, I think it's all just going to kind of fall into place going into this next month. Because if you remember last year, they weren't, they were 500 at the end of the month, 5-1. And then they're one of the best teams in November. I think they put up 22, 23 points. They had 10 wins or something. So they were fantastic in that month. And I think we could kind of see that kind of going into, the month now of February with this team, obviously being improved with all the improvements they kind of made in-house going into this year.
Yeah. And I think the thing to really pick up on is as they improve throughout the system, right, you're going to see better results. But I do see this whole, it's the little details that drive me nuts. I feel like the thing that's frustrated me at least the most over this 10-game span, and I have a lot of positives, obviously, I'm 7-2-1, but it's you're just kicking yourself most of the time. I see people online kind of going,
a lot of it's just the self-inflicted wounds.
Right. You want to make a trade, you want to go out and get this guy and that guy. It's yeah, but we haven't even really done anything. You're picking on Robert Haig. I get it, but the other guys aren't playing that well either. So it's why are you picking on one guy? It's I expect to see this as kind of a well-oiled machine. And I brought this up to you earlier today, Chris. If you listen to AV's press conference from yesterday, he actually, they talk about the physicality of the Islanders, and he kind of brushes that off because he sees it. In fact, I see it more like this as well. It's not really a talent issue. It's not a lack of size or a lack of strength. It's really a lack of execution. And by that, it's the little details, like he was saying specifically, shorter shifts. Any single time, if you watch the Flyers and you see one guy in the offensive zone by himself, looking over both of his shoulders, I guarantee you the team is playing poorly at that time. And that is usually the biggest reflection. You'll see one guy in the offensive zone, two defensemen in their own zone, and two guys on the bench. And that is the biggest sign of a bad team. And it's that lack of attention to detail. Mm-hmm. So let's go into this. We have a good record. Who has been, I'm going to say, the most disappointing player and also the most impressive player amongst the first 10 games? And just name two. And obviously, we don't need to pick too much on people. And there's certain guys you can pick on a little bit more. But James, I'll go to you on this one.
So the player that stands out to me the most right now, and it's kind of an easy one because he leads the team in points. He's got 5 goals, 7 assists, 2 primary assists last night. Would have been possibly 3 if the third one didn't go off Farabee's shin pad, but JVR. I think he's playing really good hockey. For what we want out of JVR, he's giving it to us. We want goals. We want points. That's what he's making the money for. I have hardly anything negative to say about JVR's game right now. I love that he's getting in front. I mean, all we heard last year was he was so snake bitten. It was kind of well, all right. So if he was snake bitten last year, we should see some goals this year. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So maybe that's all it was. I love the way he's playing. I mentioned he's dropping the anchors, I like to say, in the blue paint, getting those easy goals in front of the net, right? And then yesterday, when I went back and watched some of these goals, he's drawing defenders to him while he has the puck, and he's finding guys for wide open shots. Both the Farabee's goals, he was wide open, and JVR found him. I think the first JVR just was a tip, and it ended up on Farabee's stick. But even still, the third one, I think, was the Maher shot from around the point. JVR found them wide open. So I love the way that JVR is playing right now. Couldn't ask for more.
I love that. And who's your disappointing guy, I guess?
So my disappointing guy, and it's, I guess, see, it's really weird because they're not playing that great. And, I guess I'm not really expecting much from some guys. You know what? I'm going to say Travis Sanheim is a little bit disappointing for me. I know he's been playing okay, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, because it's just fun to talk about different opinions, but maybe it's just me, but I expected a little bit more from him offensively in terms of, pushing pace of play and whatnot. He's played over 200 games now, and I still haven't seen what I want to see from him consistently. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, when's it going to happen? That's all. And I felt like if it was going to be a year for Sanheim, that it was going to be this year was the year he was going to really break out, like it being in a, this is his first real big payday contract year. And it's like, this is the year I really want to see it. If he's going to make $5 million plus or whatever he could potentially get, I want to see him produce offensively,
I like that answer a lot. And I think the importance of that answer is that the expectations for Sanheim are high.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, you are our second best defender, but I want to see you think that you're better than Provorov.
Absolutely.
Like in my head,
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, I have that attitude about all. In fact, I'd argue even Ghost as well, but Myers included. Is I want them to think that they're better than Provorov, even if they're not. Right. My goal is for them to think that they're number one defenseman, and maybe Sanheim I always find is more of a confidence type of player. So when his confidence is high, his offensive production goes up. But I think that's a great answer.
That's true what you just said too. And it's his confidence, and it's kind of like, I've taken some crap for saying stuff like this before, but I want to see like more alpha type from Sanheim. I want to see him out there like he knows that he's the best defenseman on the ice. I want to see him, play north of 25 minutes a night, or I just want to see that from Sanheim. He's a first round pick. For years we heard Sanheim. Like, let's go. Like, he's a good player, so don't get me wrong. So my disappointment is, like you said, it's more that he's not performing to this standard. He's like here, but I want to see up here.
To your point, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets benched one game out of nowhere, just shocked, and it throws everybody off.
Saying that. I remember
because it's
like the other day.
Because it's like, we know you're that good. I want you to be a superstar, though. Yeah. Chris, I'll let you go, and then I'll do mine.
One thing I'll say about JVR too is that, and this is just to go off Jim's point, that
took him 28
games last year to get 12 points. He's got 12 in 10 this year. Yeah. So that kind of shows, how good he's been. I was going to say JVR, but my second would probably be Giroux. I think G's looked fantastic.
That was my choice.
I think for the most, and then you could even argue Voracek too. But I think G's been great. I think what I saw the other night on that goal against New Jersey, that third goal from when he got awkward play in the second period where he goes down screaming at the refs. He's all pissed off and everything. And then he comes out, he wins a puck battle, wins a face-off, wins a puck battle off the face-off, loses his stick, picks it up, puts himself in a good position, and then scores. Like, it's like the leadership thing that he gets so much crap about is that, like, oh, he doesn't do this and he doesn't do that. And like, and I remember I was talking to my dad the other night. It was a Saturday night game. He's telling me that they should sit Giroux next. Think to myself, he's like, how many goals he's got? I'm like, he has one. He's like, okay. I'm like, Giroux. Okay. I'm like, okay. First of all, he's never been a goal scorer, right? Second of all, I believe at the time he was, I think, first or second in points. He had 8 points in 8 games played. I'm like, and he's your captain. Why would you sit your captain? The message is not, you know what I mean? And I could go on about the whole message thing and sitting this guy and that. But again, I think G's been great. As for my most disappointing, I'd probably say Gustafsson. I think it's obviously an easy one. But again, I think Gus is just, I like the offensive game. I think that's strong. You see it on the power play. You see a lot of stuff he does. Very good stretch passer. We've seen that at times. But I think just defensively, he looks like a liability out there for the most part, I think. And honestly, way too many turnovers. I feel like he overreads the play too much. I don't know. He's just a whole mess out there, I think, for the most part. I don't know.
You're trying to help him out by saying he's overreading the play, but I don't know if he knows what he's doing, man.
Yeah,
he doesn't look like a defenseman out there sometimes.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great answer. I think both of those are great answers. completely agree with you on Giroux. I think momentum-wise, the energy he's been bringing every night is really intense.
Yeah.
And he's producing, and the team is winning, and you can just tell Hayes is doing a lot of leadership stuff too.
He honestly seems like he's quicker this year.
I think, JVR looks quicker as well. I would probably agree with that. I think they probably know that they have a window here to win a cup, and it's probably go time. So my pick, so I initially had Giroux as my, I guess, person I'm most excited about, but I'll change it now to Farabee, because in the sheer sense that it's a second year slump type of risk year, and you're not really seeing it. I mean, he just had a hat trick the other night. The kid's putting up goals. He's still not as consistent offensively as we want him to be, but his defensive game has been really strong. And I anticipate his PK usage is going to go way up as the season goes on, and hopefully he can continue the production level. But I do see a 20-goal season from him this year, definitely at the rate that he's moving. So I think that's been awesome to see, and he's projecting up. I've called him Gagne-like type of player. I still see that. I don't think he's gonna be a burner like Gagne, but again, two-way PK, goal-scoring left winger. I think he's got that. So I'm super excited about that, and the attitude. The overall attitude he has, I love it. He talks like he's a 35-year-old veteran, and he's 20 years old. It's awesome.
Yeah, dude, he's showing. You know what I like about Farabee? And so the first game, what do you have? Like 4 points, a goal and 3 assists it was, and then he has a hat trick the other night. Like, he's showing his potential. Yeah. What's going to come next is the consistency, when he can consistently do it every game or every other game type thing. So. Yeah, he's an awesome pick, because there's a lot to look forward to with Farabee already, man.
Yeah. And it's weird because he could actually be a performer in the playoffs at the way he's looking. It's like you don't usually expect, because last year in the playoffs, he was, I don't want to say ineffective, but he wasn't very effective, right? Mm-hmm. And it seems different. This year, I feel like he could shut down guys if he has to. He can score some goals and sneak them in on you, especially playing that bottom six. Disappointment-wise, I have two I have one. I'll pick on Haig. And I'm not picking on Haig because I think Haig is bad. I actually thought Haig played better last year, and I was hoping that he would make Braun a little more irrelevant. And not that I dislike Braun, but Haig is younger. He's from our system. He started playing well. He's best friends with Lindblom. You kind of hope that one works out. The way I see him playing right now, I would say he's at risk of getting traded at some point. But I like him. It's not that I don't like him, but that pairing of Braun and Haig, they just can't move the puck out of their zone, and it just kills me. Is it me,
or is it like every time that Haig gets the puck, he just loves to whip it down the glass for an icing?
It's the safe play that they have, and that's the problem. They over rely on that, and it forces one of them all of a sudden to be dynamic. And it's not there.
Sorry, but
no, it's fine.
It seems like a lot of times, and not just Haig and Braun, like the whole defense, they make plays just to make them. They don't pick their head up and analyze what's there. And I saw that on that 5-on-3 they had last night, where they were just whipping the puck around the boards. It looked like for no reason. When they picked their head up and maybe found somebody, they would have had a golden chance, and they didn't even get a shot on the 5-on-3. But my point is, it seems like a lot of the times where they have the turnovers in their own zone and things like that, they just make plays to make them, and they're not actually thinking before they do it. And then it leads to, scoring chances, goals where a goalie has to play out and everything. So I think that's kind of the problem too.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. Do you want to add something? Yeah.
Well, I have questions about. I mean, I get it, because that's exactly what they're doing. But then I ask myself, well, why? Why are they making that play? And is it because are the forwards not where they're supposed to be, or is it because they just panic? What is it? These guys are Braun's older, so he knows where to go with the puck. Is it because they where he's supposed to put it, there's nobody there, or is it just they're getting beat so badly he just flings it?
To be honest.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that's one of the things we were talking about with the details. And Yariv, you mentioned it earlier with the forwards, not being in the offensive zone with the puck carrier. I'm wondering if it's the same thing in the defensive end. The forwards are not where they're supposed to be, because I think sometimes, and you guys can let me know if I'm off base, I think sometimes we forget that the forwards have to be there to accept an outlet pass. And if they're not there, then your only choice is to get rid of the puck.
Trust me, I don't think you're off base.
No,
I think the same thing.
No, I think it's spot on. I think that's why they get exposed. I think you're absolutely right. And that's kind of what I was trying to hint at earlier is when there's too much separation from the forwards and the D, our team gets eaten up alive. Like, yeah,
Yep.
Provorov can handle it. Sanheim can handle it every now and
Myers.
then, right? But you put a guy who can't stick handle his way out of that situation, all of a sudden the puck is in the middle by itself. And how many times have we seen that this year?
For sure.
I think that's spot on. So let's go to this. So we were talking about individual players, best and worst, but I want to talk about lines. We have like kind of line combinations now. They'll probably change again to some degree, but they seem to be somewhat consistent. Let's go like who you think of the forwards looked good and who you think of the D you liked, and let's just stick it. Let's keep positive on this one, so we don't have to keep ripping players. I'll go first on this one. Overall, I've loved the idea of Patrick with Giroux and Voracek. I'd like to see that more. I do think Patrick isn't necessarily ready to be in the top 6 right now. And I think he will slide down, but I do love the veteran support there. It got me excited to see that. I love the combination of TK, but again, TK isn't playing the best. Lindblom isn't playing the best, and Patrick's coming back, right? They kind of have like this weird thing going on right now. I'd love to see them as a line, but I have really enjoyed that second line. And of the D, just minute-wise, just looking at the numbers last night, I think Provorov had 30 minutes, and then
30 minutes, 5 seconds.
Myers and Sanheim had 23 minutes each, something like that. So I'll say I don't love the top pairing because it's obviously overusing Provorov to an extent, but I love that Ghost is playing with him. The second unit, obviously makes sense, so there's not too much to talk about there. Jim, I'll let you go first on this one again. Who's your like forward line and your D line? You can pick what I said already as well.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, like forwards, it's kind of tough for me to pick a line that I like because I feel like they've been juggling the lines around a lot, and it's kind of they're still trying to figure out what works without Coots. I guess I like the idea. Like I'm just going to be honest. When I watch the games, there's no forward line 5-on-5 that truly stands out to me where I'm like, yeah, that's a line. Like keep those guys together. Like last year, you had. I don't know. Last year, all I wanted to watch was Hayes and Lawton. Put those two together. I didn't care. Like they played so well. This year, it's, I haven't really seen two guys or like in the beginning of last year, we saw Konechny, Coots, and Lindblom, right? And you were like, holy crap, I hope that's a line all year because they look great. I haven't really seen that this year. I feel like we've seen more, success on power play. I guess what was the line last night? Was it Farabee, JVR, and Hayes and Lawton?
Lawton.
That's an interesting line. I mean, they looked good last night. Who's to say if that's going to continue going forward? So I'm not really sure. I like the way Lawton's been playing. I like the way JVR's been playing. Farabee, obviously, hat trick. Why not roll the dice again with that line? So that's my forward line. Defensively, I never thought that I would say this, but like, watching Provorov with Shane Gostisbehere looks okay so far. Like it doesn't look terrible. Like it looks okay enough to continue doing it, So I guess I'm content with that pair. I'm happy with it. They're not giving up any easy goals or they're playing well. I'm not going to get negative. They're playing well.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's so good to see. And I love what you said there about that line. I agree. They've played really well. It's interesting. I do think that that's probably where Patrick is going to slot in instead of Lawton. And you imagine Lawton might shift down
sure.
When Couturier comes in. But I agree. They play really well. Chris?
I've really liked every line that JVR's been on, to be honest. I think he's played well with pretty much anybody.
True.
I've also really liked the fourth line. Raffle with Bunneman and Albie-Kubel. I think that line's been great.
Bunneman had a really strong game last game, in my opinion.
He's due for a goal. I think a couple of those guys are, and they took over that game in New Jersey to pick up the 3-1 win.
Yep.
AV praised it. Again, I mean, it's kind of tough to pick a line as we talked about because they don't have Couturier and they've essentially had different lineups since he's been hurt, which was the second game of the season. So. Again, I think for the most part, I think everything's pretty much gelled well. I don't really think anything has been too bad, to be honest. If it is, it's been switched up mid game. I know when I covered the game for Flyers Nitty, they had Giroux with Voracek and JVR for a good portion of that game. I think it was just the third period. I did like that. with the way JVR played that night. I thought that was a good line. They could do that again. Obviously, with everything else going on and things like that, also was a couple weeks ago, but still that was one that kind of did, that I personally did remember. And as for the defense, I've been saying Gostisbehere with Provorov since the beginning that he should have played. I think if Ghost wasn't on the COVID protocol list, he would have started the season with Provorov, and you wouldn't have seen Braun with Provorov to start. So again, I said it for a while. I thought they would have gelled well, and I think, again, for Gostisbehere's confidence, they haven't lost the game since he's been in the lineup too. And I believe I think he's +4. I'm not 100% sure on that, but Ghost he's looked well with Provorov. I think that's one that's kind of stood out to me.
That's a good point as well. Yeah. And I think it's very crucial that Shane Gostisbehere step up right now. And for his career, but also for the Flyers, and without Niskanen, we lost a lot of veteran leadership on defense, and it showed. It definitely showed without him and Myers in the lineup, and no Niskanen, that 3-person change suddenly. The defense did not look pretty. So it leads me to my next thing, right? So we have a couple injuries, key injuries here. And the ones I'm really thinking about are Coots and Frost. Now, Coots, I think, is about 2 weeks away. But you have Coots back. Let's say he comes back tomorrow. Where are you putting him? And Jim, I'll go first. Yeah, you go first on this one.
I throw him right back in the top line. Get it.
What's your top line?
What did it start out as? It was Couturier. Was Giroux up there?
Lindblom, Konechny, I think.
TK, I think that's what they started with.
That's interesting. I think I would. Yeah, I don't know. See, that's tough because those are probably the two guys right now that aren't playing all that well. It's tough to say mean things about Lindblom. But he's not like he was last year yet. So that would be tough. I don't know if you can. You'd have to mix it up a little bit. Maybe you throw him out there with Giroux. I don't know. Who's to say? I really don't know. But I guess you want to keep. You send Patrick down with. You said it was JVR and Farabee, right?
That's what. Yeah.
And then what's your second line? Hayes, Voracek, and
JVR.
Yeah, I don't know. That's tough, man. Because you figure. I mean, I don't really know the injury like that. Is it an injury where you can just say, "Hey, man, go play 20 minutes a night"?
That's a good question.
It doesn't seem like it is, to be honest.
Yeah,
because with the way that the injury was,
it's a rib injury.
Right? I think so. Yeah. It was looked at as like an injury where like he may not have needed as much time when like everybody kind of thought Myers would take longer when Myers only really missed 4 games. So I think it's different, and I think for the most part it might be a little longer than expected.
I think. Probably in Couturier's case, and I don't remember. I think there was a fracture, right? He had a fractured rib where I don't think that
it wasn't. It's a weird. I don't even know how to say it. There's a bunch of C's in the name.
Oh, okay. All right,
but
fair
it's
enough.
Like it's
we won't pretend to be doctors. I'm fine with that.
I think it's actually like a tear, like near like your breastbone or something.
It was something odd, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like a tear.
So if it's a tear, then.
Because I know at first they said it was shoulder, but then it was like near the ribs, and it's like a rib injury, like I guess near his, breastbone and stuff. I don't know.
Okay. I think I remember hearing Besser had it last year and missed. I think it was 14 games. They had said same exact injury. So when I heard that, I'm like, okay, well, expect to be without Coots for like a little bit over a month here.
Yeah.
But the sooner he comes back, the better. He's going to come back. I mean, he's a gamer. He's played through torn knees in the past and whatnot.
Yeah, he's definitely coming back.
And he's not going to want a minutes restriction. You know what I mean? So that'll be the interesting to me. Can he play the 20 minutes?
I definitely don't think that AV will restrict his minutes. I think if he's in the lineup, AV is going to use him. Yeah. Chris, how would you use him if he was available tomorrow?
I would throw him top line with Drew and Voracek. There are 2 guys that are right there that are leading the team in points, right up there. They're playing well. That's what I would do. I think if anything, if I'm doing that, I'm keeping the centers is Coots, Hayes, Patrick. I mean, you could interchange any wing you want. I would like to probably keep Konechny with Patrick, even though that they weren't necessarily too hot. Maybe try that again, or you put Konechny with Hayes. But I would put Coots right there with G and Jake.
Yeah, and I think there's a trickle down effect there too. So if you do what you're saying, right, that was the playoff top line. That's what I would do. Giroux, Couturier, and Voracek. You got your second line. I would consider elevating JVR because he's played so well.
I would too.
And do JVR, Hayes, and
Konechny.
And then I would do Lindblom, Actually,
Patrick,
no, I
Farabee.
wouldn't do that. Actually, I would do Farabee with Hayes and Voracek. I would try that at first, and then I would go with Patrick, TK, and Lindblom.
I think that was a line. I think.
Yeah,
Farabee, that was the first.
Well, that would be your
game.
third line at this point, and that would change the matchups for somebody like Nolan Patrick and Lindblom and TK, and that line could end up really catching teams off guard because that's a future top line all sitting on the third line. So I think the reason I asked that question because I just wanted to see the trickle down effect that happens with something like that, and you see how things change so much, just including Couturier in the lineup and the fact that he plays 20 minutes a night and PK and everything. It is already missed.
I'll be honest. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but
no, please.
I think you don't really realize how important Sean Couturier is to this team until he goes out.
Yeah,
because it was almost like who knows what they would look like with him in the lineup right now if they would be this, playing this poorly still. But you could see a trickle down effect in terms of, face-offs. And then, if you're not winning face-off, you don't have possession of the puck. If you don't have possession of the puck, the other team's getting more shots, more offensive zone time, you name it. So when Sean Couturier goes out, it's like all those things go right down with him, So I'm curious to see when he comes back if, some of those problems kind of solve themselves a little bit.
I think that's what we're all hoping for sure. So let's talk about one guy I want to talk about real quick because it seems like he was kind of pushed to the background, and he is part of the depth on this team. And even now we're talking about the D. I just want to talk about Mark Friedman. Kind of came up, had, I would say, some undisciplined play, some physical play. Obviously got banged up a little bit. Didn't look terrible, but also didn't assert himself the same way he did the year before. Then you hear comments like what AV said, where he didn't have a great camp. Then also, they replace him with Nate Prosser, who I don't think anybody wants to bash Nate, and he actually had a great game, and it shows that AV was right. It brought momentum and the whole thing. But Friedman was kind of on that list. We were making room for him. We were holding on to him for that. And now it feels so much like maybe that opportunity might not be there. Maybe I'm jumping ahead of myself there, but I don't know. I was a little shocked to see him kind of take a back seat. Chris, I'll go to you on this one first. What do you think about Friedman? What do you think happened there? Do you see him coming back?
I mean, I do. I think he'll be back. I mean, I think it's kind of tough to judge him off a game and a half because it's really all he played. I think he looked all right. He kind of played like a hothead in that second game. He had a couple bad penalties after the whistle, and that led to a goal. I feel like for the most part, I like Freeman. I always have. I think they kind of envision him as an NHL defenseman now, and I guess they kind of don't want to see that stuff, is my guess. Especially as a guy who's 25. So I wouldn't necessarily think that he's done, but I don't really know. I think Prosser playing good probably didn't help him because I think that they would most likely want to use Prosser again when they can. To be honest, as weird as it sounds, if they have to, right. Go down the line with the depth and everything, and use guys from the taxi squad and stuff. But again, I mean, I personally would like to see Freeman again. I think he deserves another chance because I think in that first game he played good, and then maybe he. Well, here's this, which maybe I just kind of thought about as I'm saying and thinking about it, is maybe he kind of played like a hothead because of that injury, like because Marchand maybe took him out in that game. He was maybe pissed off and kind of took it into the next game. I don't know.
Potentially. I mean, there's definitely something there. Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Friedman's kind of weird because in this, what did he play last year? 6 games. To me, he looked like he belonged. Mm-hmm. He didn't look out of sorts. He looked calm. He looked collective. He was making, I thought, the right plays. Wasn't rushing anything. He didn't look out of place. And that's kind of what I always look for when a new guy comes up. Do they look out of place? Do they look like they can hang around? Are they getting beat? Or, are things catching them off guard? Do they feel pressured? Are they coughing up the puck? And I haven't really seen Friedman do those things. He did take a bad penalty the other one in the game that he was in, or the game and a half that he was in. But I wasn't necessarily disappointed in his game. And I would like to see him get another shot. I really would. But I think it also says something that, if Robert Haig and Justin Braun are getting playing time over you right now with the way they're playing, maybe that says, a lot about how Friedman came into the year. I think AV, what I appreciate appreciate about AV is he's pretty cut and dry to the point. You know, if he comes out and says you had a bad camp, then you probably really did have a bad camp. So you would assume that he's in the doghouse a little bit. But if AV thinks that he could help the team win games, he'll probably put him in. So I think it's telling that Nate Prosser got in a game, over Mark Friedman.
Yeah. And I did kind of take it as, hey, this team is not playing very well. Let's get a veteran in there. I mean, Prosser is a veteran. I mean, he's a leader of the Phantoms team. It was just surprising to see Friedman kind of lose that opportunity so early in the season.
And quick, too.
Yeah, and quick. But having said that, if you didn't come into camp, though, the way you needed to look, that's maybe why he was on a short leash already. But I was a little surprised by it. I'm not going to lie. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect him to be, to have that opportunity taken away so quickly. But the team was looking terrible. So, you kind of understood. You're kind of like, yeah, the defense looks horrendous. It's kind of like, we're not picking on you, but, we're picking on you because you're the lowest in the totem pole.
And I think coming off a 6-1 loss, too, it kind of adds to it.
Oh, yeah. He was kind of like my dark horse kind of guy for, hey, maybe he can sneak in as the 6th D this year, or at the very least the 7th D, So for him to be in the situation that he's in right now is just a little bit disappointing.
Right. And that was the thing with Haig too, is that's how I thought of it. I thought Haig, I'm like, I feel comfortable with Haig as a 7, number 6. I'm like, oh, I feel good about that. And then this year, again, he hasn't looked like atrocious, but he was effective last year. And he hasn't been effective. Now, obviously, I want to give it time on all these guys, and Friedman as well. And I know he'll come back up, but I don't know. I was a little surprised by that one. So, okay, we talked about the forwards, talked about the D. Let's talk about goaltending. Let's talk about goaltending overall. For the most part, I would say Brian Elliott has been fantastic as a backup role, truly fantastic. He showed that he was absolutely ready. I wouldn't say he gave up a single bad goal at all. And I think he shows why he's a veteran and brought back in here. I think he's been great. I think Carter Hart's been very good at times. I think he's had maybe 1 or 2, goals that you would want to have back, but he's been the starter and clearly the starter, which I've appreciated that AV did. And I like that he kept him into that game and let him battle it out, let him get angry. That stuff is real. There's going to be nights where you're going to get embarrassed and the veteran can't come in and save you. So I think that was actually appropriate. And I think goaltending has been pretty strong. And I think without goaltending being as strong, we're probably not 7-2-1. Maybe we're a little closer to 500, but they are a part of this team. Carter Hart is a flyer. And it's awesome to see that there really isn't one part of this team where you're like, we need a desperate move today. Like this team is not competing. With goaltending, even losing Niskanen just doesn't seem as noticeable as it probably should. Jim, I'll go to you on this one first. What do you think about goaltending through the beginning of the season? You can talk about recent as well.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the question marks was, all season long, you had guys like Holtby, you had Lundqvist out there, you had not Markstrom, but there was another guy that's not coming to mind right now that, the Flyers could have went out and got another capable backup, because I think a lot of what we heard, potentially there was going to be a lot of back-to-backs this year. And, is Brian Elliott going to break down if he's got to play in a lot of these? So, a very pleasant surprise for me so far has been Brian Elliott. I think he's possibly the perfect backup right now for Carter Hart. I mean, a Grizzly vet, just 3-0, 2.22 goals against average, .932 save percentage with the shutout. Like, you can't really ask for more from Moose. So playing outstanding. Carter Hart, I'm not worried about Carter Hart. He was a part of a couple bad games. His save percentage is 900. His goals against average is through the roof. I think for me personally, a lot of that has been the team play in front of him, which we're all assuming they're going to get figured out. So not worried about Carter Hart at all. And I love how Brian Elliott's playing so far.
Yeah, it's awesome to see. Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly couldn't really say it any better. I think Hart's been fine. I don't think there's any reason to harp on him. I think Yariv, as you said, there's been a few he probably wants back, but a lot of it he's left out to dry, or there's guys with their back turned, whatever. For Moose, I think in every game he's played, he's kept them in it early. We saw it last night. The shots at the first TV timeout were 7-1 in favor of the Islanders. Had that beautiful save from Barzal on the 2-on-1. The game against New Jersey, I think the shots were 6-1 at the first TV timeout, and then against Buffalo, when he had the shutout, there was a 5-on-3 early. handful of shots. And he definitely, he was a brick wall that night. I think his rebound control has been something that's been that I've been paying attention close to. He looked fantastic. He's moving well. I think for Hart too. Again, he had a few hiccups like that goal against Pittsburgh behind the net and everything. But again, I think for the most part, he's been fine. Again, I don't think there's any reason to be worried about the goaltending. As I think Yariv, you said, if they didn't have the goaltending, they want to be 7-2-1. And I think for the most part, I don't think there's any reason to be mad about good goaltending. So I think, again, I think it's helping the Flyers. And I know there's a lot of people that are saying, oh, well, because of the goaltending, well, there's no reason to be mad about it. They're winning games because their goalies are keeping them in it early, and they're figuring out their game as it moves on.
I'm sorry. How cool is that though to say that the Flyers are where they are right now because of goaltending? Like whenever in your life have you been able to say that? So
not in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't watching hockey at that age, at least.
I know, dude. I just had to point that out because
I
it's
don't even know if
crazy.
I was born, to be honest.
No, here's the reality of it. And this is actually, it's funny you said that because I was going to ask you this question. I've said this before, and people might mock me for this. There is not a single goaltending tandem that I would switch with in the NHL.
I wouldn't either.
I
think they have the best goalie tandem in the league.
People can argue about that, but I trust in Carter Hart implicitly. Like I think he is way ahead of schedule. So the fact that I have him and Brian Elliott, who most years would be my starter as a Flyers fan, I'm singing in the rain as far as I'm concerned. Because back in the day, we would have signed Elliott anyway without Hart. Like that would have been our starter. Yeah. So the fact that we have Elliott doing what he's doing and playing well, and he's, like you said, the savvy vet, which is really what we need behind Hart. I don't want somebody competing with him, going, well, one day I'm going to catch Hart. Like I really need Hart to be laser focused on being a franchise goalie. And I think that's kind of what's happening right now, slowly. Do you guys feel the same way? And
I
Chris,
do,
yeah.
Because I feel like for the most part, like we've heard it so many times that, their relationship is very good. And that I think that's one of the reasons why they want to keep Moose too, is because it helps out Hart so much. So I think Hart's above schedule too. I think for the most part, he's turned. I think in the next, you could even argue right now. I think he's one of the best goalies in the league. He could be. I think out of the maybe 4 or 5 you could say that are easily the top goalies in the league, like Price, Vasilevsky, Rask, Hellebuck. You could throw John Gibson. I think you could easily argue Hart. With some of those guys, and I think but then again, those are the star goalies of the league.
Right.
So I think Hart's right there. I don't think there's any reason to doubt him. He's young, and I think he's been fantastic.
You gotta love the Hart jersey over your shoulder too.
Yeah, it looks good, man.
Yeah. Joe, what do you think, man?
I don't know. You couldn't ask for more from these guys. I mean, obviously we would like to see more from Hart, but like I said, it's, what are you going to do in the games where he gave up, 6 goals a couple times? Yeah. It's a very solid tandem. I think I mentioned already, like during the offseason, it's kind of like, hey, let's see if they can improve over Elliott. But, signing them for what they got him for. And, it's almost like, if he's a stock, like you're really squeezing all the juice out of that lemon. You know what I mean? Like you can't ask for more.
I like that. That's perfect. That's a great way of great analogy for Brian Elliott. And he looks healthy. I'll say that too about Elliott, and they're using him limited minutes, obviously limited games, but he looks healthy. I'm not worried about Brian Elliott's like lower back, at some point or his hip.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was kind of hinting at too. Like he looks good in the net. He's not really.
Yeah, he doesn't look stiff. He looks super comfortable and happy. He seems happy with his role with the team too, which is great. All right, so we're getting close to the end of the show, but I do want to talk about next game. So we have a couple games coming up. Chris, it's escaping me. Who we play next game?
Boston, Wednesday, Friday, and then the Capitals, Sunday, Tuesday.
Right. So Boston and then the Capitals. We have obviously extremely intense games coming up. The Boston games will probably be a little bit of revenge for the Flyers. And then we go in to play the number 1 team, the Caps, from there. Jim, I'll go to you on this one, and then Chris, we'll go to you. How do you feel about them going into Boston? And then I guess we could talk about Washington. No, I know it's a little tough because it's a little down the line, but how do you feel about Washington as well?
So I feel good. This team, I think they should feel like they need to redeem themselves against Boston. It's, put everything aside, the way you're playing, the wins you just got, put it all to the side, and you need to beat Boston one game because let's face it. I mean, the first game they lost, Boston stole a point from them. They took an extra point. The Flyers, I think, should have won that game. They were winning, what was it, 2-0 heading into the third, and they gave up 4 or 5 third period goals. That's embarrassing. And then to come out the next game and get curb stomped 6-1, they embarrassed you twice in a row, you know. And even though the first game doesn't look that bad on paper, to me, Boston was not a team that I thought was going to be first or second in the division. I thought they were going to be weaker without Chara and Krug. And, you know, Pasternak just came back. I think it was last game, so they didn't have Pasternak. To me, I think they need to come out and they need to win the first game for sure. And then, you know, maybe the second one's potentially a letdown game. I don't know. But they need to win the first one, in my opinion. Looking ahead to Washington, I'm not as high on Washington as a lot of people, I don't think. I know they have Laviolette. I know they haven't lost a regulation game yet, but the roster's old. We know the names. It's the same guys that have been there for years. The defense is, you know, still a little suspect. I love that they went out and got Chara. You know, he's not the Chara that everybody remembers, but, you know, on a team that's going to make a deep playoff run, I don't think it's a negative to have a Zdeno Chara on defense. The Flyers could certainly use him. I saw that they had him in practice at least on the top defensive pairing with John Carlson, so I thought that was interesting. The games aren't going to be easy by any means, but I think the Flyers could finish out these 4 games with 5 points. That's just my opinion.
All right, I like that. Chris?
I honestly, I was kind of thinking that I think they'll win both games against Boston. I think it's a revenge factor, and I think just the way that they've played recently and how everything's kind of coming together for them, I think they'll win Wednesday. I think Friday, I think they'll kind of continue that. I honestly think going into Washington, I'd probably say a split because again, it's the Capitals. I mean, the Caps have always been a good regular season team. They're always a team that battles hard. You know, the last year the Flyers kind of had their number a little bit. So I think for the most part, I think this is an important stretch to kind of get the feeling of where the team will maybe be. But I think it's also kind of sample size too, because it's only a 4-game stretch. But again, it's pivotal because it's 2 teams where I said this in my post-game video where it's like teams in your division when I completely lost my mind that they're only playing teams in their division. But what I meant to say was teams that are, you know, right there at the top of your division with you. So I think for the most part, I honestly had 3 of the next 4. I said that going into the Devils and Islanders, I said they'd win 3 of the next 4 and they won all 4. So again, I'm feeling high off these few wins. I think they'll kind of take this and use it as momentum. And you know, hopefully you might see Coots. I mean, I don't know. You could with the way the injury is. I mean, I know he was put on IR, but you know, I think.
You mean against the Caps, or you mean against Boston?
I think against Washington, you could see him. I don't know, because it is, you know, Sunday and Tuesday. That is next week, so that, you know, might be a good amount of time. But again, we don't really know. So it could be something. But again, I think probably 3 of the next 4. I think they'll win both against Boston and split against Washington.
It's going to be such a hell of a momentum booster to get Coots back if they have a winning record and all of a sudden you get your best player back like that.
And that's why I think it made sense to do the TK benching when they were winning, because it's not like why would they wait for the loss? You might as well do it when you're winning games. And you know, Saturday's game wasn't like a dire game they had to win. Where I mean, so
same thing like Sanheim, right? It's he's going, I get it, you're winning, but you're also not playing like the best team in the league. And if you want to win a cup, you have to play like the best team in the league. You're demanding more. It's the same reason why I mentioned benching Sanheim for almost no reason. You don't really want to bench him, but you want to just demand more out of him. And I think it's key.
You got to raise your standards, man. This is not if they want to be better than the teams that we watch for the last 4 or 5 years, they need to, even when they win, if they're not playing to the level that you expect as the coach, something's got to be done, because you can't just accept crap play just because they're getting 2 points. You know, that's why I love AV. I think he's the perfect coach for this team. And I think he has the pulse of the team pretty well. I completely trust Alain Vigneault.
I'm not going to lie. Some of these moves in the beginning of the season, you were kind of like, wait, why is he doing this? And it all worked out. And you're like, okay. And no, I totally agree with you. And he has really high expectations. And while I liked Hackstall, again, I don't rip coaches. I don't think Hackstall was stupid or incompetent. I don't know if he was a good NHL coach, but I don't think he was like necessarily the guy, obviously. But he coached afraid to lose. I noticed that. AV does not do that. AV is like, I have my standards. I have my way of doing things. I don't care if you fire me. I don't care if you don't like me. This is what I'm doing. And you have to do that in the NHL. And I would argue Laviolette does that as well.
I think it's the only way success comes.
Yeah, well, they get fired. A lot of these great coaches that win, they tend to get fired too because they go all in. You know, it's like my way. You have to be an alpha in a room full of alphas, to your point, Jim.
That's tough to be.
Yes. Every night as well.
Yep.
Harder than most people, I think, anticipate. All right, that's a great place to end the show. Before we go, though, Jim, where can people follow you? What are you working on? You know, any kind of shout outs, anything upcoming?
Yeah, everybody can follow me on Twitter at JimIkeHW. We run a podcast account. We run a hockey site. You can follow the podcast at HW Radio 18 on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find our site, hwhockey.net. There's all kinds of podcast episodes, articles, a lot of good stuff. Check it out, guys.
Yeah, and you've been doing awesome interviews lately. You've been getting some ex-players and stuff like that. It's just really cool stuff, dude.
Yeah, man. It's so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, really cool and very noticeable. So definitely check out. I think you had Lassie Kukkonen on. I was like,
oh my God.
Lassie Kukkonen.
And it's so crazy. That was one of my favorite episodes too. I'm like, oh my God, I got Lassie Kukkonen coming on, you know? And it's like, you know, and to us, it's like a big thing, but like to other people, it's like Lassie Kukkonen, but I couldn't wait to do it, dude. I'm telling you, it was so much fun.
That guy's got a big heart, that player.
Such a great guy, man. If you guys get a chance to talk to him, you should definitely get him on. He's such an awesome guy.
I'll reach out to him. Well, thank you again. I appreciate Jim coming on. And Chris, where can people follow you?
Yeah, so YouTube is Firesman93. I do a bunch of post-game videos, discussion, all that stuff. Obviously,
Instagram.
Instagram. Right? Same thing, Firesman93. Twitter is _Chris Maher. And then the co-host of the Florida podcast, check that out too. And obviously, as always, articles and stuff for FlyersNittyGritty.com.
God, we're all so busy.
I just want to say, dude, I love what you guys do. Each of you individually put out so much great content. I couldn't be more appreciative of you guys having me on your show.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
Appreciate it.
So much. Yeah, same with you, dude. Absolutely. And it's awesome to see that stuff. And yeah, it's good to see that that we're positive. We're like getting all excited about the Flyers.
Yeah, it feels good.
Good, nice little vibe. Yeah.
We got like stupid grins on our faces.
Now they're going to come out Tuesday and do another 6-1, right?
Yeah, then bomb it, lose both games, and we're just going to be like, all right, so the Flyers are terrible, right? All right. So, again, want to thank our sponsor, Jim Steaks on South. Check out Jim Steaks on South. Order yourself cheesesteaks, save businesses, especially companies like Jim's. They definitely deserve it. And for everybody else, follow us on everything, Flyers Nitty Gritty, Twitter. We have our YouTube channel. We have this show. I have the Gritty Ranch show. We have Jamie does videos. People throw stuff up there all the time. Check out all the writers. Check out Chris, obviously writes for us as well at times and covers the game on site. And also check out my new show, Always Level Up. The first episode was with Lisa Ann. It's something a little different other than hockey, but it's kind of related to sports and also just overcoming failure. Kind of just trying to do something a little different. Episode 2 is filming right after this, actually, with Dennis Bermudez, who was a UFC fighter. I'm pretty excited about that one as well. So, yeah, check out more content, like and subscribe. And thank you for everybody for listening. We love you very much. And remember to always stay gritty.